The Long Road to True Happiness by WierdRandomTina. Before I get started, guys, as you know, I have an English accent, so instead of saying branch all the time, I'm going to say branch, simply because when I say branch, I always end up slipping into my Applejack voice, and that's just not Poppy's accent, okay? So bear with me on that. Anyway, here we go. Chapter 1. A Tiny Turn of Events. The massive party celebrating Troll Village's 20 years of freedom from the Bergens had been a massive success for the young Princess Poppy. Literally every troll, young and old, had attended the colourful, musical, 8-hour-long, glitterific celebration. Well, every troll except for one. Branch, the dull grey troll who lived far outside the village. But why was Poppy so disappointed by his absence? The antisocial, paranoid, pessimistic rump had never shown up to a single one of her festivities, or any village activities for that matter. He rejected each and every one of her handmade invitations, whether he accepted the card with a cold and or sarcastic remark, or took it only to get her to leave him alone. Occasionally he'd fling it into the bush if he was in a worse than usual mood, or refused to take it at all, in which case she would leave it outside the entrance of his underground bunker. Still, even though it was Branch's choice to not come, and even though he was always rude to her, Poppy hated that he was the only troll out of hundreds who missed out on all this really fun night. She knew that everyone has some happiness inside them, and just wished there was some way she could help Branch find it. But, as always, the cheerful magenta princess focused on the brighter side. She had done her very best to include Branch. She made the rest of her village happy with her fantastic party. She got to spend the whole night having tons of fun with all her best friends, including her dearest friend, Creek. Just thinking of him put a warm smile on her face and made her heart expand in her small chest. Poppy finished the final nitpicks of party cleanup on her own. 10 or 15 minutes of solitude following a major event allowed her to reset for the next big shindig. But tonight, she spent much of that trying to wrap her head around Branch's stubbornness, once and for all. She frowned as she picked up some stray confetti. For so many years, Poppy had tried every way she knew to be kind to him, to cheer him up, to get him to join in on their fun. Yet, for some reason, her efforts seemed to trigger the opposite reaction from him. He was getting more aggravated and becoming more determined to avoid their activities. There has to be a way to get through to Branch. There's always a way. On her way to the trash bin, Poppy noticed a tangled pile of lights off to the side that had fallen off one of the tents. Every little light on the string was still functioning, except for one. Its dullness was strikingly visible among all the other bright and colourful bulbs, strikingly different from the others. In that moment, Poppy stopped dead in her tracks, the confetti dropping out of her hands. She was hit strongly by a moment of clarity, a realization that had never occurred to her before, a concept she had never stopped to consider. All this time, she had been focusing on what she thought would make Branch happy, based on things that made her and the other trolls happy. But Branch wasn't like her or the other trolls. His personality, his opinions, his lifestyle. He was so different from all of them. The princess smiled again and resumed collecting the confetti as a new determination rose inside her. She didn't need to give up helping Branch. She just needed a different approach, something that would appeal to him. I'll just have to tone it down. Try on a smaller scale, she decided. Then her smile dropped a bit. But how do I do that? Bubbly Poppy was used to organising and hosting fancy dance parties and colourful festivals, and heart-stopping surprises full of giant glitter bombs and hug attacks and deafening music. What's a smaller version of all that? She scrunched up her pink freckled face in concentration. Think, Poppy. A small gesture of kindness, something subtle, something he might actually want to accept, something that represents the village, but also suits him. She glanced around and soon caught a glimpse of the snack tables nearby. They were almost empty, just a few random leftovers here and there, but it gave her an idea. The next morning, Branch ventured out of his underground survival bunker to find something fresh for breakfast. He was very thankful to have avoided any trace of the big, loud, crazy party that took place in the village last night. Yet, there was still a drop of regret in his heart. A stupid little yearning that he could never fully escape. Branch even told himself multiple times how extremely relieved he was that Poppy hadn't shown up partway through the night to try yet again to convince him to join in. His heart twisted with contradicting emotions. The upbeat pink and magenta princess was a pain in their hair whenever she was around. Yet, whenever she wasn't, he longed to see her again. Branch's heart ached even more as he recalled how he had spent the night. First, he had carefully mended the colourful invitation Poppy had given him, that he had thrown to the ground and stomped on right in front of her. Once it was good as new, he set it at his dining table and just stared sadly at it for... he wasn't even sure for how long. Eventually, he looked through his collection of all the other various fancy invites and holiday cards she had offered him in the past, and stared sadly at each of them. Lastly, he let himself be consumed by useless daydreams about the sweet, friendly, optimistic, beautiful princess, until he fell into a restless sleep at the table. Branch needed a dose of fresh air to clear his head after all that. He would pick some berries or mushrooms for a quick, bland meal, and then stock up on his emergency supplies. Yes, that would bury all of the bittersweet feelings. Distracting himself with dull but necessary tasks usually helped numb his broken heart, at least for a short while. Opening up the hatch, Branch blinked several times until his eyes adjusted to the sunlight. Once they did, he noticed a small, light pink box in the grass next to the door. It was lightly decorated with little hearts and flowers, and a folded note was taped to the top. It was obvious who it was from, based on the familiar style, plus the fact that Poppy was the only troll who ever bothered with him. Branch glanced around, wondering if she was nearby, then silently scolded himself for hoping she was there. He took several seconds to stare down at the little white paper before picking it up and unfolding it to read Poppy's message, writing that was excessively swirled, with hearts dotting all of her eyes, and smiley faces accenting all of her exclamation points. "Hi, Branch! Since you didn't make it to the party last night, I thought I would bring you a taste of it. Literally. I don't know what you like in treats, but hopefully some of these will appeal to you. Just wanted to know I was thinking of you. Enjoy!" Branch tentatively opened the box, bracing himself for the burst of pesky glitter that always seemed to come with any item of Poppy's. But this time, there wasn't a speck. Not even any corny music or cheery recorded message. Opening the box all the way revealed a couple of plain donuts, 4 cookies, each of a different kind, a chocolate cupcake, a butter tart, a sliver of carrot cake, and some bite-sized pastries. For a solid minute, he couldn't even figure out how to react. Branch was used to an overwhelming explosion of friendliness from her, often literally. For years, Poppy had offered him over-the-top gifts with the intent of getting something in return from him. A hug, a smile, a yes to one of her parties. This was the first time she'd ever done something so subtle, trying to include him in a way that wasn't begging him to actually get involved with her shenanigans. Meanwhile, Poppy was hiding in the bushes nearby, using her troll hair's colour-changing ability to camouflage. Branch had turned away, so she couldn't see his expression, but he seemed to be rereading the note. She began to feel a little nervous as time stretched on. What if he smashed the whole box, tossed the whole thing into a bush? If this mellow approach didn't work either, what was she to do for him next? After what seemed like an entire morning, Poppy watched him retreat into his bunker, taking the whole box and the note with him. She triumphantly pumped her fist into the air, letting out a tiny, hushed, "Yes!" It may have been a very teeny tiny step, but it was still a step in the right direction. Pleased with her long-awaited success, she skipped merrily back to the village, keeping her eyes open for other appropriate ideas to connect with Branch. Back in the darkness of his bunker, Branch read the note for a third time as he descended in the elevator, and a fourth time as he sat at his table. He let out a dry chuckle at the irony of her words. Poppy's thinking of me? Yeah, that's a good one. He gently set the paper down and opened the box again. He couldn't remember the last time he had had a sugary snack, and honestly, they didn't look appealing. But Poppy seemed to have picked the plainest snacks to better suit his taste. So at least he could do was to give it a chance. Throughout the day, Branch had gradually tried all of them. Most he managed only a bite or two of each. He didn't like the flaky pastries at all. The carrot cake and cupcake were too rich, the donuts too sugary. But 3 of the cookies were decent, and the butter tart was actually quite good. These 4 things he ate entirely. Branch had changed his mind about gathering supplies, instead spending the day in the kitchen, cleaning it and reorganizing his storage rooms, checking all the emergency exits, and thinking about Poppy. As hard as he tried to distract himself, he couldn't get the princess off his mind. Even more so now than normal. He debated on thanking her for the treats. How he would, or even if he should. It would be rude to not say something to her, and he was already rude enough to her. He had never shown her any form of gratitude for anything. Quite the opposite, in fact. But Branch had always appreciated Poppy's kindness, even when those attempts had been kind of coming off as obnoxious. And this time, it wasn't just some annoying typical troll thing that she knew he had 0 interest in. It was genuinely thoughtful, especially for him. So she deserved some thanks for this one at least. But what benefit would one little thanks have anyway? He likely wouldn't be capable of saying it in a nice tone, which would completely defeat the purpose. By the evening, Branch's stomach was churning, perhaps from snacking on the unfamiliar junk food all day, perhaps from fretting too much over Poppy, but most likely it was a combination of both. End of chapter. Hi guys, hope you enjoyed that. This is an absolutely lovely story, so basically what happens with the Bergens in the movie doesn't happen, but how would Poppy and Branch get together otherwise? So the idea is that they both do think of each other, but they need to change their approaches. Poppy's being too extreme and Branch's being too rude, and they do recognise that in themselves, but it's going to take a while for them to change. And I like that they're willing to put in that effort. Poppy just giving him a box of treats instead of the usual boom, be happy, and the fact that she's applying it to him individually. I really like that. Anyway, you guys know the drill. Like, comment and subscribe and hit that bell to get notified whenever I upload a new video. Have a good day, night, whatever time zone you're in. Bye my guys, gals and non-binary pals. I'll see you in another video. Take care.